Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this April the 13th, 2015 meeting of the Columbus Municipal School District Board of Trustees. At this time, we will have invocation offered by Mrs. Curry Fisher, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Kendall Henry, a fourth grader at Fairview Elementary School. Ms. Fisher.
Father God, we come to you this evening so thankful that you are our Lord and Savior. We pray that you will bless the school district, our teachers, our administrators, our students. Keep them protected from all hurt, harm, and danger. And Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to celebrate once again the gift of the love given by your Son, Christ Jesus, through the sacrifice on the cross. In the name of your Holy Son, Christ Jesus, we pray your blessings upon us. Amen.
Amen. Kendall, will you please come forward?
Salute, pledge. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Kendall. At this time, we do have a quorum present tonight. All members are here, so we are open for conducting business. Do we have any persons who have signed up for open forum? Do we have the list?
Yes. I'm sorry, he's going to go around and get the list. We do have 3.
First, for open forum, we have Roy Turner. Welcome, Mr. Turner.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing?
We're good.
Well, I'm here this evening. My name is Roy Turner. I'm here this evening in regards to my granddaughter who's a special need grandkid going to Cook Elementary School. And what I'm here about today is some of the things that we done had to endure over the past years and stuff, dealing with Dr. Wilcock over at the school and stuff.
Excuse me 1 second, Mr. Turner. Excuse me 1 second. Mr. Turner, if you will be sharing with us tonight in open forum, which we are in right now, we cannot talk about or have you to discuss any particular employee's job performance at this time, but you're welcome to come back during executive session and we can address that at that time.
And when will that be?
Executive session on our agenda, it's after closed determination.
After close determination?
Yes, sir. It's probably about halfway through the meeting.
Oh, okay. So what, you want me to hang around or you want me to come back or what?
That would be good. And Dr.
I ain't got nowhere to go. I got all evening. I need to get this off my chest.
Dr. Hickman will send someone to get you, and we'll invite you to come into executive session.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next for open forum, we have Wanda Turner. Okay, thank you. Then last for open forum, we have Mr. Lee Burdine from Columbus First United Methodist Church.
Thank you very much. Lee Burdine, I'm serving chair at Columbus First United Methodist Church, and our pastor, Reagan Miscali, is currently doing continuing education, and she sends her regards. And we thank you very much for this opportunity to come before you tonight. we wanted to update the board and our trustees on our backpack program at Franklin Academy. And in July, we came in and we had a sort of modest goal of starting with 20 students. We saw that the need was very great. We went and we were able to move that to 40 students. Today, we're serving 72 children. Some of those are siblings of the students. And we appreciate very much the teachers and the staff at Franklin Academy for helping us work with that program, because the teachers are in a great situation to identify at-need students, and we're able to do this in a private and a very dignified way. But the program has grown, and it seems to be very successful. And we would certainly like to continue it next year. And so in your packet, we have presented a kind of a summary of this, and we're asking permission if we could continue the program for the school year 2015-2016, so we can begin fundraising efforts and hopefully grow this program.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burdine. Board, do we have any questions or comments?
Mr. Burdine? Hi. I'd just like to thank you, and I note, excuse me, in the reading material that you went from the 20 to the 40, but you've actually escalated to about 72, I believe?
That's correct.
Yes, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Leitzenheiser?
Let me reiterate what Mrs. Fisher just said. Thank you, and thank the church so much. And I know what you can do in the future depends on fundraising, but do y'all have in your mind sort of a target goal that you would like to work towards?
Well, you know, as it builds, it's really, we don't want to limit it, but I do think there's a great need at Franklin, probably throughout the whole school district. And so we would certainly like to go to 100 students and probably more than that. One thing, it's been a very good program to also get to know in the community. We've been able to work in the fall carnivals and also do teacher appreciation luncheons. And that, by doing that, we get more volunteers in, they see the needs greater, and so we are able to solicit more help, and we help more students that way. So the more we can do of that, probably the greater the program can grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to First United Methodist Church for partnering with our school and with our school district. At this time, we have reached the point on the agenda to adopt the agenda as it is printed. Board, this does require an action. Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda, board, is to approve 2 sets of minutes. The first for consideration is March 16, 2015. The second set is from April the 1st, 2015. If it is the pleasure of the board that we could take both of these sets of minutes up at one time. Okay. This does require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is that of the Office of the Superintendent, Dr. Philip Hickman. First, I think, Dr. Hickman, you have special recognition.
Yes, Ms. Lenore, if you can please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
At this time, it gives me great pleasure, as always, to present special recognitions on behalf of our superintendent and Board of Trustees. Board, at this time, I would ask if you would please come down front and join Dr. Hickman. We will begin the recognitions. We will begin tonight's recognitions as kind of where we left off at last month with science fair winners from the upper fair from students at Columbus High School. We recently had several students to participate in the statewide science fair at the University of Southern Mississippi. And I am proud to announce tonight that we did have 2 of our students to place first in this prestigious competition. So at this time, we would like to recognize Rashida Roy and Laurel Yarborough. If we can have them to come up front, please. And I'm asking them both to come at the same time because they did participate in a group project in chemistry, and we are very proud of their accomplishments at the state fair. Congratulations, Laurel and Rashida. At this time, we would like to recognize National Board Certified Teacher here in our district. And for those of you who are familiar with the National Board Certification, this is recognized as the gold standard in teacher certifications. So we are proud to announce that Ms. Tamara Dantzler, a special education at Sale Elementary, has completed all of the requirements and is hereby a National Board Certified Teacher. Ms. Dantzler, if you could come forward. We're extremely proud of your accomplishments, Ms. Dantzler. And we will also have recognitions that our principals have made. We started these a couple of months ago, and this month we will continue the recognitions. We will start out by asking Ms. Cynthia Ming, history teacher at Columbus High School, to please come forward. And a statement regarding Ms. Ming. Ms. Student achievement is always at the forefront for Ms. Ming. She is willing to do whatever it takes to reach her students and to make them successful. So congratulations, Ms. Ming. We appreciate all of your dedication and hard work at Columbus High School. Thank you so much. Next, we will have Mr. Blake Reynolds from Columbus Middle School. Mrs. Dismukes, principal at Columbus Middle School, said that she would like to recognize Mr. Blake Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds is an art teacher at the middle school. He works diligently in the classroom to broaden the students' minds by integrating art in all subjects. Mr. Reynolds plays a major role in the school, especially during testing. He makes himself accessible to all students, and he even, for those of you who were at the presentation where the world heavyweight boxer Deontay Wilder was at Columbus Middle School, he actually designed the backdrop that the community was so excited about when they came out for that day. Congratulations and thank you, Mr. Reynolds. And finally, we have a group of teachers that are here tonight to be recognized on behalf of Columbus Alternative School, and I'm going to ask, I know one of them is out because of some unforeseen reasons, but we will ask for Mr. Chris Childress and Miss Elizabeth Roberts to come forward at this time. Miss April Clayton was not able to be with us tonight. And Miss Barr at Columbus Alternative School said that she would like to recognize these teachers because they are a part of the Acceleration Academy at the Columbus Alternative School for our overage students. And she states that each of these individuals has played a significant role in the implementation of the Acceleration Academy. She cannot imagine the success of the students and this program without their dedication. Each person brings unique qualities to the table. They challenge the students and ensure that they have opportunities to experience success. She says, Coach Childress is a coach in every single way. He believes in every child. Ms. Roberts accepts nothing but the best from her students, and her students know that they have come too far to give up now. And finally, Ms. April Clayton, who is unable to be with us, is a 3-month educator who accepted this challenge and has not looked back. Thank you all for the service that you've provided to those students.
At this time, we have reached the goal update by Dr. Hickman. Dr. Hickman, I think the first item is EMCC.
Mr. Shannon.
Thank you, Board President, Dr. Hickman, rest of the board members. Last month, we did have Mr. Mark Alexander here to present some information concerning the partnership that we'd like to embark upon with EMCC. You do have a resolution before you that does need to declare rooms 106, 107, 108, 109, and 110 as surplus space, meaning we are not currently using that space, and we would like to allow EMCC to use that space to further our community in their endeavors. Also, you do have a lease agreement between EMCC and CMSD for the lease of that space so that it can be utilized for this upcoming school year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shannon. Board, we have received all 3 documents with regard to the EMCC Hunt partnership. We do have the first item, which is the resolution, which needs to be approved. This requires an action.
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the resolution as presented to the board.
All right, it has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda that requires an action is the consideration to approve the lease agreement between EMCC and CMSD. This does require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, just one question. Are we on B because the usage
Yep.
and the lease are two separate?
Usage proposal.
Okay.
The usage proposal,
It's different. We just approved the resolution. I wanted to make sure that we're doing the usage now and then the lease.
yes, we can
Okay.
do the usage now.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the EMCC Hunt usage proposal as presented to the board.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
And it has been seconded by Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Now on to item number C, consideration to approve the lease agreement. Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mr. Leitzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Any discussion?
I just want to ask one question. Mr. Dunn, you or Mr. Hemphill have reviewed the lease, and you've satisfied any
Yes,
questions
sir.
or concerns you have?
Absolutely. We
Okay.
reproduced all of this.
So it has been motioned by Mr. Leitzenheiser, second by Mr. Spears. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is report on student achievement policy IH, goal number 1.
Mr. Pugh.
Madam President, Dr. Hickman, members of the board, you have been given the projections from the latest benchmark that was done in March from ELS. This is for 5th and 8th grade science, biology 1, and U.S. history. It indicates the percent of questions correct for each test by school and the numbers of percentages of students who would be minimal, basic, proficient, and advanced in each category for each school.
Okay, board, we've had an opportunity to review the information. Are there any questions for Mr. Pugh?
One question I would just like to know is, you know, obviously with this snapshot here is, I mean, with any other previous What's the data showing as far as the trending? This is pretty static in its format now, so.
Yes, we had 2 schools who, compared to last year's data, 2 schools that looked like they would score higher than they did previously. The other schools looked like it would be a slight drop. But when these tests were given, like the science test is not given until middle of May, so it's almost 2 full months.
But as far as what you can determine with the data we're looking at, things seem to be on an upward trajectory.
For 2 of the schools, yes.
Right, yes. Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Pugh, the next test that our students will be participating in will occur when?
For a benchmark is the MAP assessment that is currently going on.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Pugh about this portion of the Student Achievement Report? Dr. Hickman?
Okay. If you could talk about the next report. Is it Pam with the dropout? I'm sorry, it's student achievement is next. I mean, student attendance.
Good evening, Madam President, board members.
Good evening.
Do you have the graph showing our attendance, average daily attendance for March, excuse me, with March included, as well as the chart, and I believe there is a number of students with greater than 10 absences that you asked for.
And if I can add, by each school, you're going month from the beginning of August all the way until now.
All the way till now. It goes through March. Of course, we don't have numbers for April yet, but it goes through March.
Right. Board, do you?
Okay, so board, we have this report, and we do see that the district average for attendance is right at 94.88%, which is just shy of the 95% mark that we've established for ourselves. Do we have any questions, or do you see any areas of concerns across the district with regard to student attendance? All right, if there are no questions, that we'll move to the next report.
Okay. Ms. Lenore, if we can talk about dropout.
Sure. Madam President, Board, Dr. Hickman, we have presented the dropout report for the month of March. The dropouts that you see are the ones that were noted in the district for March, and we continue to work towards preventative measures for dropout prevention, including our Overage Academy that we just recognized teachers for working with, and currently we do have plans in place for an ACT prep program to be held at Columbus High School.
Madam President, may I speak?
Yes, please.
One of the things that we're noticing in our dropout population, that there actually are compulsory, our freshmen who are over age 17, and they hit the age that they're legally allowed to drop out, and they dropped out. And so that's the importance of our Accelerated Academy that we just recognized. And so I know you guys really helped me support that push behind that Accelerated Academy, but this is another reason why that's so important, is that we're not losing our seniors, per se, the kids who went all the way through the high school, but because of whatever happened in the past, and now they're freshmen and they're 16 going on 17, and then we're losing them. So just wanted to make sure we know the importance of that Accelerated Academy program, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman. The next item on the agenda is that of the graduation options.
We included a handout for graduations options. It's a quick reference chart that we use. We mentioned last month that we were working with some seniors at Columbus High School to pass the ACT as a component to help them with graduation. So we thought that this would be important information to share with you so that you can see how the ACT, and not only the ACT, but you can see how other options play into a student graduating from high school. So we are working with the ACT prep so that we can determine students who need extra support to achieve the score of 17 for Algebra 1, the Biology 1, the English 2, and the U.S. History. Because if they do score 17, then it will replace that subject area test that they are missing.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Lenore. Board, are there any questions about the new options for graduation? All right, thank you very much. That brings us to the summer programs planning. That was given to us as information only. Dr. Heatman, was there anyone to share information on that?
No, ma'am.
All right. That brings us to the school climate survey update, which corresponds to goal number 4.
As reported last month, we are working to institute a school climate survey in our schools for this year. We are on target to have that survey administered to students in grades 3 through 12 beginning May 4th through 15th. That's the actual window that's set forth by the survey that we are working with. The survey will center around topics such as student engagement, relationships, academic rigor, school culture, and STEM. It is an overall school experience survey, and at the end of the survey, we will receive custom reports and disaggregated data.
Ms. Lenore, do we know about the time frame when we can expect to see what the results are from the survey?
Sure. We will receive information back in the district 7 business days after the survey is administered.
Okay, so that we possibly might make the June board meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Dr.
And just to make sure that we know this is going to be our baseline data. And so this is good that we're going to revisit this same survey, in years to come, and we can really build on whether or not we're changing options. That was one of the other benefit of adding STEM to it, because we really want to look at, our cohorts, how are we growing them up into, the career fields and the career paths and the pathways. So it's a good way to evaluate our program as well.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Lenore. The next item on our agenda in regards to reporting is teacher attendance report, and it correlates to goal number 1.
Okay. Mr. Pugh.
For the month of March, we have our teacher attendance. It did increase in 2 of the elementary schools and slight decrease in the alternative school, in that they're red, they have very few teachers. So any teacher who's out and they have one that's dealing with a family member that's in hospice care, it's going to skew their data just a little bit, and that should be back in green next month.
Board, do we have any questions about teacher attendance across the district?
I just want one thing clarified for me. When the report states 404 staff, we're only talking about teachers in the district and teachers' aides. Is that correct?
I believe the 404 is teachers.
Okay, teachers only.
Teachers only.
Okay.
So where it says staff, we probably can just change that to teachers. Is that what you're talking about, Mr.
Yes,
Reeves?
I just wanted to make certain that, as far as that wasn't, obviously it's a teacher report.
Right.
But does that include teacher's aid, teacher assistants, those type of things? And so the 404 that you're saying is just teachers in the classroom, just to clarify so that I know what you're talking about.
That is correct.
Okay.
If there aren't any questions about the teacher attendance report, that brings us to the CMSD safety report.
Okay. Mr. Shannon.
Thank you, Madam President, Dr. Hickman, board members. The first report that you see involves our staff members. We did have 3 incidents there that we had some staff members that did and did not require medical attention because of some mishaps at their sites. The second report deals with student discipline. You have the information broken down by school site, but I will concentrate on the actual district report. You do see that the numbers are slightly down overall, but we have seen a spike in numbers for bus incidents. For that reason, we have contacted MSBA to provide some free training to our bus drivers, which will take place this week. I believe it's on Wednesday. And because we're a member of their consortium, they do provide that training free of charge.
Very good. Questions, board?
Mr. Shannon, can you elaborate a little bit on what that training for the bus drivers will entail?
It will deal, for the most part, with bus driver-student conflict. We did have a gentleman, Mr. Chris Strickland, to come up and do the training for our teachers at half of our schools this past week. And the teachers said that the training was very, very informative and very beneficial. We would like for him to tailor that training for bus drivers and the situations that they encounter on their daily routes. So we'll deal with conflicts and how to handle those.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Shannon, as we look at that report, are there any other categories that kind of jump out, and do we have ways to address those issues as well?
We do have some other areas such as fighting across the district that we want to make sure that we address by monitoring all of the areas where those things take place and making sure we equip our students with peaceful ways to resolve the conflicts that they have. Not a huge increase, but the numbers are up about 20 over this time last year. And we always want that number to be 0. So we will continue to work in that area.
Another category that stood out was disruptive behavior. I think that one had about 612 incidences. What does that consist of? What is a disruptive behavior?
That deals with anything that may prevent or the teacher may perceive as a disruption in the classroom. That is one of the reasons why we asked Mr. Strickland from MSBA to come in and do that training, because we did notice that number rising from this time in last year and past months. We do want to make sure our teachers understand our culture and our students understand what the rules are. They're clearly stated and consequences are clearly stated also.
All right, thank you. Board, are there other questions about the monthly discipline report? No questions? Mrs. Fisher.
When I looked, Mr. Shannon, when I looked at the stats, especially for the disruptive behavior that Mrs. Verdell just alluded to, as well as the bus incidents, what else can this district do in addition to giving the bus drivers training to give them the resources they need to squash the disruptions and the fighting or whatever it is that's occurring on the bus? Because when I looked at the stats going across all the schools, there's a rise. There's a significant rise with this year compared to last year. So what is it that we can do?
Right. There's a, Ms. Fisher, if you don't mind if I answer the question. There's a, in the sheet that I also gave you guys that dealt with the social emotional, there's two folds. One is we have to better educate and prepare our students in a level of character development. And that's one of the things, if you listen to that sheet, that we're really looking at directly teaching appropriate behavior with our students, directly understanding the behavioral expectations of our school, and directly understanding the behavioral expectations on the bus. The other thing is, when you talk about the training, the bus driver doesn't have that many tools. They have to drive the bus. That's their main concern, and we have cameras on the bus. And like I told you guys a million times before, you know, when I was assistant principal, one of the depressing jobs was to look at the bus tapes. Even my honor roll, gifted, whatever students, you know, sometimes you put them in situations on the bus and they act up. But one of the defense mechanisms of a good bus driver is to build relationships with your kids. Greet your kids when they get on the bus. Know your kids. Be able to say them by name. All those kind of things makes a difference even when a bus driver can I would say yell back, but call back a student's name and ask them to remove themselves and come up front. Once you have that relationship, a student is more likely to comply. And so that's kind of a twofold approach. It's not really much you can do. The other aspect of it is defining what's disruptive behavior. That's some of the training that we're going to be doing towards the end of the school year and next year. Everything is not disruptive behavior, and that needs to be coded as a disruption. You know, some of the things can be, and what I mean within the classroom. Within the bus setting, like I said, the bus driver's main job is to get the kids there safely. But in the classroom, there are some things that we're going to equip our teachers with to be able to handle situations and like he said, understand the culture, understand how to intervene beforehand before that behavior is encoded as disruption. The other thing is to work on, and I'm not saying that this is a problem with all of our teachers, but to work on how do we deal with our males. You know, our males are big, they kind of puff up, they kind of have a quick posture, and sometimes that is, you know, a little intimidating. And so it's being able to know how to diffuse and to talk to our young men or to see, you know, what are our young men doing that are playing that is not serious, that we need to reteach that behavior to let them know not only this is not acceptable in the classroom, but this is what that can look like. So it's a lot of teaching. I mean, that's, you know, the educating and teaching is the only thing that we can do to replace that behavior. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman. Board, are there any other questions about the student discipline report?
I just have one
Mrs.
question.
Spears.
I know last year we had several different incidents that occurred in the high school and other parts of the school, and so we had asked, you know, some type of strategy such as monitors in the hall, watching the bathrooms and doing different things. So how is that program still being orchestrated? Because I think at one time bus drivers were manning those positions throughout the school. So how is that going currently, and has that helped, or have we suspended those type of operations and now things are back to the time before?
If you and I definitely would like more people to visit our high schools. You know, the disruption is happening within the classroom, and that's usually where a teacher can catch it. Our acting principal has really cut down on the transition between the hallways and students being able to roam free and those unabated in the bathrooms and those kind of things. So you're right, we're putting a lot of things in place that I don't know what carried over from last year, but really started to implement a lot of things in place to really cut down on some of those unsafe behaviors within the hallways.
Okay, so it would be safe to say that we've suspended those operations as far as, you know, monitoring the bathrooms during different times. Like lunchtime, I think was one thing, people weren't going to lunch or the cafeteria, going to the cafeteria, and then they were ending up in the bathroom or something, and, you know, of course, different things occurred from that issue. So, I mean, I guess that's my question. Do we still have that program in place, or is it now just that, you know, things have changed and so we're not having anything happen in the bathrooms any longer? So
no, it's definitely structure and the systems.
Okay.
So Mr. Bray when he was in place, and then when Mr. Johnson, and we've worked with Ms. Cargile and Mr. Green and Mr. Kane and those kind of things to really coordinate the time frame of first of all, there's less transitions now, okay, and kids are not necessarily allowed to continue freely kind of leave class and go to the restroom and those kind of things. Sure. And during the transitions in the hallways. The next thing that will cut that down next year will be the 4x4 schedule, and I talk about that in here. And because of the 4x4 schedule, the kids are in classes longer. You don't have all those breaks and transitions where kids can, you know, roam free into the hallways and those kind of things.
Okay.
Great questions.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Dr. Hickman.
Just one other observation, and I do want to make sure that that I end on a note that is very positive, because there's a lot of positive things that are happening in our school. When I look back at the high school report, the comparative report from 2013 to 14 to 15, I was very pleased to see the numbers decrease as significantly as they have. And more so than that, what you don't have on this report is what students are saying. They really appreciate the new culture that is being implemented at the high school. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for noticing.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Fisher. The next item on the agenda was that of the training opportunity that bus drivers will receive this week, offered by the Mississippi School Board Association. So that was provided for information only. Item number 8 is board committee assignments. Board, as you know, once we turn over a new year for board service, we have to make sure that we disband any committees that we already have in place and start them up anew for the new year. I think last year we had 3 committees, and so what I'd like to do tonight is to just see who's willing to serve in what capacity. So I'll start with you, Mrs. Fisher. I know last year you served on the policy committee. Are you willing to continue to serve in that capacity?
Madam President, thank you very much. I would love to have the opportunity to continue with the review that we've done. And I think that we probably need this board to see in numbers the number of policies that we've updated or amended since we did that review. So yes, I would like to stay on that committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. And so then, Mr. Jones, I would like to see if you would be willing to serve on the policy committee along with Mrs. Fisher. I'm going to step back from that committee this year. It is a great opportunity to get to see up close and personal. I'm not going to try to sell you on this, but it's a great opportunity to see up close and personal the policies, and it's just a really great way to learn the policies. So would you be willing to serve in that capacity?
When do they meet?
The meetings are scheduled by Mrs. Lenore, and she will let you know when the meetings will be.
How often do they meet?
We meet once a month.
Once a month?
Yes.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm very busy, so.
Well, we appreciate you letting us know up front.
But get to something that's 10 times a month. You know.
But I will tell you this: it's flexible. I mean, sometimes we have to check and adjust. If somebody can't make it, we'll reschedule. So you'll be okay. I promise you, they'll make sure that it coordinates with your schedule.
We're good.
So we have Mrs. Fisher and we have Mr. Jones for the Policy Review Committee. The next committee, Mr. Lotzenheiser, I know last year that you worked on that, the community involvement piece. We didn't have a whole lot going on with that, but I think as we move forward with doing more partnerships in the community, that will be a very vital role for this board.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so Mr. Lotzenheiser, I will put you down for that, and I will serve with you on that, but if you can certainly take the lead on that, I would appreciate it. And that brings us to the last committee, which is that of real estate. And Mr. Spears, I know you worked with me last year on that. Would you be willing to serve in that capacity again?
Yes.
All right, and I'll work with you on that. And so once we complete this year, then we can look at next year. Whoever's in charge in this role can determine what's needed and who will serve in what, or at least ask who will serve in what. So thank you all for agreeing in advance to serve in those capacities. The next item on the agenda is that of the monthly policy review committee updates. Because we did not have an approved committee at that time, we could not meet because the committee needed to disband. So we do not have any policies to review this month. But I'm taking next month, we'll have some policies to review, Mr. Jones and Mrs. Lenore and Mrs. Fisher. So that brings us to...
Excuse me, just to let Mr. Jones know, because there was one question he did not ask. There's a very small amount of reading. The most you'll have to read is about 1,000 pages in between meetings. So.
But you could do that. Yeah, you could do that. Exactly. That brings us to the consent agenda items board. We do have 8 items included under the consent agenda. If it is the pleasure of the board, if we can take all of these at one time. It does require an action. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion?
Just one question. I know it was highlighted at our review meeting, but I just want to clarify one other thing with respect to the WSCA, that this is only using their purchasing power and negotiated. It has nothing to do with a contract of ongoing. Okay. So
all right. Thank you, Ms. Tippett. If there is no more discussion, all in favor of approving the consent agenda items, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on our agenda is that of the Office of Personnel. Item number A, job description for Director of Academic Support Services. Dr. Hickman.
Mr. Hunley? Well, on there, we're just, the position for academic support services is the position that will help support both special education and our counseling services throughout the district.
All right. Mr. Hunley?
Oh, yes, Madam President, members of the board.
Yes.
What you see before you is a copy of the job description that's been developed in conjunction with the superintendent's office and the personnel office. And as you can see, it just states the qualifications for the position, the reporting structure, and the overall goals of the position, along with the examples of duties and responsibilities. So as far as as Dr. Hickman mentioned, some of the duties that it entails include helping to supervise the health services function, after-school enrichment services, dropout prevention, special education, attendance and other student service initiatives. And so, again, it's just supporting the overall mission of the district.
All right. Board, are there questions of Dr. Hickman with regard to this position description?
No, ma'am. Madam President, I make a motion that we not approve the Director of Academic Support Services.
Okay. It has been motioned by Mr. Spears not to approve the position of Director of Academic Support Services. Is there a second? Okay, so there's a substitute motion made by Mrs. Fisher to approve the Director of Academic Support Services. Is there a second? Is there a second? I'll second. Discussion.
Yes, Madam President. The main reason is that in reviewing over the 2012, 2013, 2014, and of course what's being presented to the board tonight for this position, it seems to be a great deal of overlap between those roles that would be and have been executed, to just put that in point, that have been executed by the assistant superintendent over time, going back to Mr. Brown. Also with other staff that are currently in place, whether that be, and I forget, I believe it's Ms. Smith and Ms. Aldridge and others that kind of collude together with that particular same type of description. It just doesn't, it's creating a position to spend money at, and that's why I don't support it at all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spears. Is there any other discussion with regard to this position? So the motion has been made by Mrs. Fisher. It was seconded by Verdell. If there's no more discussion, all in favor of approving the position of Director of Academic Support Services, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record show that Mrs. Fisher and Mrs. Verdell is in agreement. Yay. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Mr. Lotzenheiser, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Spears, please let the record note that the motion does fail. The next item on the agenda is that of the 2015-2016 salary schedule.
Madam
Yes.
President, I would like to ask that we not approve the following scales. Scale 1, Scale 2, Scale 3, Scale 4, Scale 5, Scale 6, Scale 7, Scale 8, Scale 9, Scale 11, Scale 12, Scale 13, Scale 14, Scale 15, Scale 19, Scale 24, Scale 28, Scale 33, Scale 34, Scale 36, and the supplements.
So, Mr. Spears, will you state for me which scales you are motioning to approve? That way I can record.
Okay. That was a motion
Okay.
to not approve those scales, and then I have the motion to approve the scales after that.
Okay, will you list them for me, please?
I
So
will
that-
after this.
So that is your motion, but I
Yes.
need to capture those because I don't know
Okay.
the ones that you've.
I'm making a motion not to approve the following scales. Scale,
Can you say 1 through something?
no, because there's some that are out of sequence. Yes. Scale 1, Scale 2, Scale 3. Is my mic on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Scale 1, Scale 2, Scale 3, Scale 4, Scale 5, Scale 6, Scale 7, Scale 8, Scale 9, Scale 11, Scale 12, Scale 13, Scale 14, Scale 15, Scale 19, Scale 24, Scale 28, Scale 33, Scale 34, and Scale 36, the supplements.
Okay. So I
Well, the supplements, I believe, is Scale 36.
36 is the supplements for additional duties. Okay.
Yes.
So that is Mr. Spears' motion, not to approve all of the numbers that he shared with us. Is there a second?
Second.
So it has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Let me write that. Has been seconded by Mr. Jones. Discussion.
Yes. I took the time to go back over the salary scale listing for, obviously, this year, and the 2014-15 scale, which we're operating under currently, and then also to look back as far as I could into the 2013-14. What I was amazed to find is the major shift, a tectonic shift, and I'll put that because it was very huge, in the amount of salaries that were requested to go up. Now, it took an act of the Mississippi legislature to give teachers a job. Let me be a caveat, I am aspiring to no political office. So let's be clear about that.
You mean
No, I'm
teachers
not.
at an increase?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? If we approve the scales as they're presented, then that would mean that the top 5 in the hierarchy of the school district under this board and under Dr. Hickman would see an increase in salary depending on where they had, but obviously they are proportionate depending on what step they go to, and so this is not an astronomical number, by $170,400. Then if you go down to scale 6 through 9, which are the principals, those do not really have any rhyme or reason to them from what I can decipher from what's being put out here, but they would increase, including alternative school principal, by only a total of about $23,000 to about $26,000. And then if you go down and you look at all the other, and I have every single one of them listed here, so it's not just guessing at it. Obviously, some did not get any increases. And then if we come down and we look at those that are or have been left out, let's just say in the past, last year we gave raises to the
cafeteria
workers and supervisor and different things. Well, this year there's a raise for the supervisor, but no one gets a raise that's a worker. Theirs are stagnant. They don't move at all. And then, of course, the same situation in the district, in the maintenance. Supervisor gets a raise. None of the other people that are working there get any type of a raise. There are areas that have been identified, and I think were discussed as far as security, IT, let's see, who were the other, nurses that were left out before that got a very, and I'm just going to put it this way, paltry increase compared to like what some of the others were asked to be move up if we approve these scales. And so what I did is I computed and said all principal positions would increase by an average, and we know an average is higher and there's some lower, of $5,360 per position. Assistant principal positions would increase by an average of $7,533. And I go back to if you take last year, which the legislature put in $1,500 of an increase for teachers,
Right.
and this year's $1,000, and take that two together and divide it by 2, that's only a $1,250 increase for teachers in the classroom. And of course, other top central office personnel would be an increase, and of course, these are different positions that are here as far as personnel and others that would be increased by an average of $6,275.
All right.
So with that being said, that's why I would request that those scales mentioned not be approved.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Spears. Does anyone have discussion about the same issue, but maybe in support of the salary scale? Okay. If there's no more discussion, Dr. Hickman?
Yeah. First of all, those figures are not correct. And second of all, I think my employees do deserve raises. I think this year the staff all the way through the whole district is working very hard, and a lot of them have not were not given raises for in excess of 7 years. And so, Ms. McGar, if you can please add to some of that.
What we did on the salary scales was to increase the steps by $1,200 and just carry them out 8 steps. So if a person was on step 2, they wouldn't automatically go to step 8.
Right.
They would just go to the next step up. And I did the actual figures based on what they're making this year and what they would make according to this. And for those people who are not just going up on the scale, but based on last year's scales, it's only an increase of $81,365.
Okay, and that was a number that I heard.
It's only 81, she said $81,000 is the only number because they're only going up for one scale. They don't jump all the scales. Everybody, only the max increase was 1,200, and which is.
So, Mr. Spears, when you did your analysis, did you analyze it the way that Mrs. McGar is explaining it?
What I did is I took the 2014-15, which we are currently operating under, and then I looked, and some of the scales were built out to where instead of 4 steps, now they go 8 steps. And so, of course, you have a certain point where you basically ceiling out. You can't go any higher once you get to step 4 or something along those lines. If you look at the shift between the steps of the total amounts, whether it be for a bachelor's, if you look for a master's, if you look for a doctorate or other type of advanced degree, then those end steps, those ceilings, continue to go higher. And what I'm saying is that if you go and you approve based off this is not me grandstanding, this is just the facts, and I'll give you everything I've got down here if you would like to see it. But the point is that you go back to the throes of what this district just came out of years ago with an unsustainable path of payroll. Payroll just increased, and I just had the number verified just a second ago, 404 teachers. And that's great. But $2,500 times 404, my calculation is a little over $1 million. And that's that the legislature has basically given to us as far as extra dollars now, but there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. Our requests locally went down by $400,000 year over year, which you can see in the ad valorem collections. So when you add $1 million and a decrease of $400,000, and that's not getting into all the extra this and that. And if we were really, in my mind, putting the money by allocating and making things good, I mean, we can raise teacher pay here. You increase the supplement. Now, I go back to the fact is that's why I made my recommendations to not approve those scales. And if they're not approved, it's my belief and understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we could look at what was considered last year as far as the scales that are currently operating under.
And I don't know the excess of last year. I know that we had excess and duplications in programs and those kind of things. When you look at raising student achievement, programs are nice, but you have to invest in people. And I think that our people within our district work hard. And one of the things that he alluded to is, so for instance, some people, no matter how many years they work now, they will never get a raise because they hit a ceiling. And so what we did was shift that so that they are rewarded a little bit more for their years of service. And so, that's,
okay.
Those are things that I kind of stand behind in supporting our staff. I believe in excellence all over, so not only our teachers, but our support staff are very important in growing this district and really meeting the needs of our kids.
Well, you're preaching to the choir when it comes to that, because I haven't once gone against anything that would be pro for anybody that's working here. Although I think there needs to be some equilibrium in the way that we administer the way that people that are rewarded and how they're rewarded, because if you go and you spend and give extra steps and eventually those may be filled, and that's great, with those higher steps, you're going to continue to put pressure on not being able to give those individuals that are there on the front lines every single day, because at some point they will tap out too. I mean, if you can go, and here's my last thing about this, is the fact is that the supplements, for example, it just completely blows my mind, because this year, and I looked at last year's numbers and I compared it to this year's schedule. So it's an apple-to-apple comparison. You want 6 individuals for football. This year you want 8. And then means that per person extra, you've got to pay that per additional supplement. So
Right.
now,
No, I was just saying, right.
Actually, we added a lot, I think 45 more supplements. The reason is, we have no after-school programs for kids throughout the whole entire district that are not just sports-oriented. So the supplements meet the needs that we're allowed to incentivize our teachers to stay after with our kids and build the after-school programs that we know. When you look at raising student achievement, you're really looking at how do you extend the school day, after-school programs, and you look at how are you extending the summer. And so how do we incentivize for people to stay longer during the summer?
Okay,
Kind
so-
of what I already prepared you guys for.
So let me ask this question. When we go through and we look at when we start looking at the after-school programs and all the ones that are funded through Century 21, and it says this person for this rate of time and different things, those persons are incentivized by the pay that they're getting.
We're
So
building
you're
it in
talking
for
about
next
bringing-
year's. We're
so-
building we're building the after-school program, sir.
Oh, okay, well, the way that I look at this is that you've got 45 club sponsors here for a total of $500 per person, which is $22,500.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
So if we have 45 clubs,
If
then
we have.
those are the supplements
So you're
available.
asking us to approve this, and then we're going to build out 45 clubs.
But Mr. Spears, I mean, we have to have
When I
the.
think of club, I think of Spanish club, I think of Mu Alpha Theta, I think of things like that that are already going. It's not just that we want to create a club for the sake of creating it so we can pay somebody $500.
I understand our
Mathematically,
value
that
in
doesn't-
education is that our kids we need to be able to provide a variety of experiences for our children in our district.
All right.
And I don't back away from that as a superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman. Thank you, Mr. Spears. Mrs. McGar, so just for a point of clarification, for any of the pay increases that we have on this list, on this salary schedule, the dollar amount that this district will be impacted by for making this approval is how much money?
$81,365.
$81,365.
Now, there are a lot of salaries that are increasing just because even if we stay with the same salary schedules we have for 2014, 2015, there are many that are increasing because they are going up on their step. So, so with the teacher pay raise and going up on their steps, that will be $580,536 approximately. And then other personnel, not teachers, their step increases, according to the old schedules, is $293,971. If these new scales were to be approved, that would add an additional $81,365. Now, MAEP increase is $759,613.
And MAEP funds can be used to pay salaries for which positions?
Any of these that, other than the ones that are federally funded.
So the MAEP
Any
monies
district
would be,
maintenance,
what is the amount for MAEP?
it's an increase of $759,613.
And so for
That
all-
is to fund the teacher pay raises, which that funds more than just the teacher pay raise that was approved by the legislature.
Okay, and so the totals that you just gave us, the 81K, the 505K, and the other 200K, about how much is that?
Let's see. I don't have it added up. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll wait.
Okay. Where's the home button? $955,871.
So that number compared to the MAEP is a difference of about 200 plus K,
$196,000.
$196,000.
So basically, we can give the teacher pay raises and the people their step increases according to the old schedules, or we can give everyone a raise according to the new schedules, and it would just be an increase of $81,000.
Okay. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Mr. Lotzenheiser.
I think Mr. Spears has given us a lot of information to reflect upon and consider. And I'd like some time to consider what he has presented. I think we all need to
I agree.
take a, long, hard look at what he has presented. So personally, I would like to maybe defer this until the next opportunity so that we can consider what he has put on the table.
So, Mr. Spears and Mr. Jones, so you have the motion, Mr. Spears, and Mr. Jones, you have the second. Would you be willing to withdraw your motion and your second to give us time to take your notes that you have developed?
Sure, I mean, I have no, I mean,
Yes,
the
I
numbers are not going to change, but yes.
Okay, so you'll withdraw your motion. Mr. Jones, will you withdraw your second? So, Mr. Lotzenheiser, are you moving that we table this until our next meeting?
Yes, but I would like Mr. Spears to provide his data so that we can all study it together.
I'd be glad to do it.
You gonna type that up for us?
No, I got it written. You're going to have to decipher my handwriting, but you're more than welcome to it.
We'll take it. We'll get it so that we can all see what it is that you see and compare to what Mrs. McGar is stating, and then to what Dr. Hickman is.
And you have the 2014, 14,
We
15
have that.
scales. If you go back and look at this time last year when
We
they
have
were
it. We can pull it out of board
requested
book.
to
Okay, so Mr. Lotzenheiser has the motion.
14, 15, swearing to 14, 15. Next year will be 15, 16.
Mr. Spears' data, but Ms. McGar, if she would provide, I think we need to take a look at what has been presented to us orally tonight.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Lotzenheiser that we table the 2015-2016 salary schedules, and that Mr. Spears provides his analysis along with Mrs. McGar's information to the board so that we all can review and compare apples to apples. Is there a second?
Are we tabling that to a certain date?
Mr. Lotzenheiser, to our planning meeting? Would that be-
No, no. We
Mr.
said
Spears?
in the planning meetings, we weren't going to take action, and I would ask that we would be able to discuss it at our next meeting at 6 o'clock in May.
That would, if this thing can be deferred until then, that would be
May,
fine with me.
may I add?
Dr. Hickman?
We will have an issue with teacher contracts.
So when are teacher contracts needed?
Now, we're just
Why
doing-
teacher contracts?
Yeah, we're just doing the ones that he just said, not the teachers.
We will have an issue with teacher contracts, teacher renewing their contracts or wanting to stay.
Well, before I was stopped, I was going to give a motion that would
We
include
have to have
teacher
a-
contracts.
One second, Mr. Spears.
So-
Dr. Hickman?
Because we do the contract according to what they're paid.
Well, Madam President, in that case, I mean, we could go forward with what I was presenting, and then you could hear the ones that I said that I request be approved, and that includes teacher contracts, and that solves Mr. Dr. Hickman's problem.
So your motion to approve which items?
Well, that's what I was going to get to, and then we got into all this back and forth about stuff, and so.
So right now, we have on the floor Mr. Lotzenheiser's motion that we table the item. Dr. Hickman,
And
before,
I'd said to the next appropriate time. I didn't necessarily limit it to the 6 o'clock, but whatever would be the appropriate time.
okay, thank you, Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second for Mr. Lotzenheiser's motion?
I'm not, let me just clear.
Yes,
I
Mr.
think
Dunn.
under Robert's Rules of Order, if you make a motion to table, it goes to the next regular scheduled meeting, I believe. Now, I'm not an expert in that, I mean, but I'm pretty sure that it does. That next regularly scheduled meeting, I think, is a school, one of the.
Visit. It is a school visit.
So you don't want that to happen, so you need to give a date, I think, to make it practical.
So our regular May meeting would be the second Monday in May,
Correct.
and that date would be,
The 11th.
I mean, if we could reasonably defer it until then, I would put that in my motion, but if we can't do that, then we need to come up with another date.
well, I mean, I go back to my whole point, is that had I been able to go through and make my motion here that I have for approval, the teacher contracts are set up for approval on their scale, and therefore that would not be a problem, and therefore there wouldn't be a problem for us being able to have it at 6 o'clock on May the 11th.
Well, that's the question. We only making a motion to not approve the ones that you called off.
We're only making, we're actually making
Motion
the
to
motion to table
That's
the
what I mean,
salary
table the-
scale altogether in its
Altogether, okay.
entirety.
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is, I don't understand why if we had a motion and a second, we had discussion, why the call wasn't made for us to take action.
Well, it's all, I mean, it's fine.
Because, I mean,
So-
that's outside the scope of Robert's Rules of Order, of the way that we proceed here in procedure.
Well, we appreciate you for, withdrawing your motion and Mr. Jones withdrawing his second, because, we all want to make sure that we can review the information and that we all are well-informed and that we can see all of the different, which is what discussion does, because there are some things that you may see that maybe someone else didn't see in their reviewing of the information. Mr. Dunn, were you going to say something?
I'm just wanting to make sure, Mr. Lotzenhauser, you've made a motion to table to May the 11th. These items are all of this. Push your button if you...
The ones that Mr. Spears reflected in his motion, starting with 1 and ending with 36, however many number that totals up to be, those are the ones that I would ask us, because he had made a number of comments in support of his motion. Mr. Garr had made some other comments, and I just want us to have the data from both sides to take a look at it and just review it and then come back and make what I hopefully be an informed decision.
So, Madam President,
so you're making a motion.
Wait 1 second. Mr. Spears.
Okay, one question. So we're tabling the items that I listed out that were not just 1 through 36, but I'll go through them once again if we need to.
You don't have to. I've noted them all. So if, as a point of clarification, Mr. Lotzenhauser, if that is your motion for the items that Mr. Spears, and we have that. Mrs. Fisher.
I was going to say that for the record, because Mr. Lotzenhauser has made a motion to table, that we should hear those items again, just so that we can be very clear for the record what is being tabled.
I have them. I'll call them out.
I have them.
Items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 19, 24, 28, 33, 34, and 36. Is that correct, Mrs. Spears?
That's correct.
That's
All
what I
right.
have.
So is there a second for Mr. Lotzenhauser's motion?
I second.
It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenhauser, second by Mr. Jones. If there is no more discussion, all in favor of tabling the items that I just listed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record show that Mr. Lotzenhauser, Verdell, Jones, and Spears are in favor of the motion. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record show that Mrs. Fisher is in opposition. Now,
that was tabled to May the 11th.
To May the 11th.
Okay.
That brings us now to the remaining items on the 2015-2016 salary schedules.
Yes, Madam President, I motion that we approve the following salary scales: Scale 10, Scale 16, Scale 17, Scale 18, Scale 20, Scale 21, Scale 22, Scale 23, Scale 25, Scale 26, Scale 27, Scale 29, Scale 30, Scale 31, Scale 32, Scale 35, and then Scale 37, which deals with substitute teachers.
All right, so Mr. Spears has made the motion to approve the items that he just listed. Is there a second?
Would you please...
I will second that.
Yeah, if you would just repeat them, the President, rather than using scale. It's hard to follow.
I will repeat. The motion is to approve items 10, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 29, 30, 31, 32, 35, and 37. So it has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Lotzenhauser. Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the items that I just stated, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record note that Mr. Lotzenhauser, Verdell, Jones, and Spears are in favor of the motion. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Any abstentions?
I'm sorry.
In favor?
In favor.
Opposed?
In favor.
Okay, it is unanimous. Please let the record note that the vote is unanimous to approve items 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, and 29, 30, 31, 32, 35, and 37. The next item on our agenda is that for teacher recommendations for 2015-2016. Board, we have had an opportunity to review that list. This does require an action.
Madam President, I ask
Yes.
that on this particular staff personnel, that we take each section, such as resignations, retirements, change of assignment, recommendations, individually, please.
Which letter are we on now?
This is item number D, which is teacher recommendation, Mr. Spears, not personnel. This is item number D, teacher recommendation for 20. There should have been a separate, you should have had a separate report for that, for all certified teachers.
We skipped over C.
That's what I was thinking.
Right.
I'll go back to C. Item number C is consideration to approve staff personnel items.
Yes,
This
Madam.
does require inaction. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I make a motion that we take the separate sections individually.
Okay, is there a second to Mr. Spears' motion?
Second.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears and second by Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr.
The
Spears?
reason for it, just some questions such as under change of assignment for the individual from counselor, it wasn't clarified as to why we had a 50-50 split between Title I and district maintenance, and now 100% of that will become district maintenance expense. Was that because that position is no longer allowed to be under Title I, and so that would be supplanting? I would just
So-
like to understand why the shift from
So,
the split
Dr.
to
Hickman,
the-
Mr. Spears, will you please note which item you're referring to on the report?
It is item number 1 under change of assignment. Ms. Stanton, I believe, counselor. And of course, it's going from counselor to teacher, but is that the reason that we're going?
Positions you can. Can't job performance, but you can.
I mean, it's on the paper, it's public,
Right.
so.
So what's your question?
So my
Mr. Spears?
question is, why is it becoming 100% of district maintenance? Is it because she's becoming a teacher instead of a counselor, and that's why there's the shift in funding split?
Dr. Hickman or Mr. Hunley? Your answer is?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mr.
Yes.
Spears? Okay, all right. So it has been motioned by Mr. Spears and second by Mr. Jones that we go through each section, and that is correct, Mr. Spears, each section of the personnel agenda and call for a vote that way. All in favor of that motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record note that Mr. Lotzenheiser, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Spears is in favor of going through the personnel item section by section. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record know that Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Verdell is in opposition. The motion does carry. So the first item, or the first section for the personnel agenda is that of resignations. Board, those are items number 1 through 8, beginning with Arthur Bush, ending with Emily Trimble. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I motion that we approve the resignations as submitted.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears to approve the resignations. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next section of the personnel agenda is that of retirements. Item number 1 is Linda Ball, and it concludes with item number 5, Flora Edwards. Nope, it goes to item number 13 on the second page, Frida Hallman. Is there a motion to approve the retirements?
Madam President, I motion that we not let anyone retire. No.
Come on.
Madam President, I motion that we accept the retirements as presented to the board.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it has been seconded by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the retirements, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is that of change of assignments. We only have one change of assignment. Mrs. Stanton, from counselor at Stokes Beard to teacher. Is there a motion to approve?
You said 1? I have 3.
Do I have? Will you pull that up, please? Okay, so change of assignment, we have 3 items under that. Items 1 through 3. This does require a motion. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the change of assignment. Bear with me one second here, let me get to that. Change of assignment as presented to the board.
Okay, it has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve changes in assignment, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the personnel agenda is that of employee recommendations. We have, he's going to pull it up. There's only one item on the copy that I have here.
No,
This
there-
does,
I'm sorry.
There's
Employee
more.
recommendations, we have 3.
so we have recommendations, hold it still, please. Recommendations, we have
3.
3 items. So we have 3 items. Do you have that, Mr. Lightenheiser? So we have a school resource officer. We have 1 assistant teacher. Okay, and then we have another assistant teacher. This does require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I make a motion that we not approve, well, actually, I just want to make this point of clarification first. Under the resource officer, the step that it's listing there for 19 years does not exist.
I think that must be a typo. I reviewed the,
Right.
and I think it was at 10 years. I
Right,
think
no,
that
and,
is for
and
10
and
years.
I could understand that, but what I mean by that doesn't exist is because if we pay $30,300, then we're paying on the just approved scale that starts July 1st, not the scale that was approved for this school year, which would mean that the pay is $29,328 at the 10-year versus paying $30,300, which would be what is approved, what was approved earlier that will start July 1st. So unless I'm wrong, we can't pay someone on next year's scale. We would have to pay them on this year's scale. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, I mean, I don't see how we can approve that unless we correct the numbers.
Mr. Hunley, were you going to provide some information?
Madam President, members of the board,
Mr. Hunley.
the scale for the security officers is based off of the current year, 2014, 2015. And as you see, it does max out at 10 years of experience, and the recommended person for the position does have 19 years, so that is why we have the $30,300 recommended salary.
So the salary scale, Mr. Hunley, for 2014, 2015, for 10 years of experience, what is the salary?
$30,300 for 187 days.
$30,300.
Yes.
Okay, so explain to me, when I'm looking at the officers, and then there's another category for officers, one's $29,328.
It's based on the number of days in the year the person will be employed, and this person will be employed for 187 days compared to 181.
Okay. Where? See, that goes back to my point, is why do we not have this information then? It's not on here to know. All I look at is if you give me an officer and say, okay, this person has 19 years and we're going to hire them at this rate, and I look at officers, which this is the 2014-15 schedules, just like you're reviewing, it tells me $29,328. Now, had you put, or not you specifically, so I don't want you to think I'm targeting you, but my point is that now it becomes subjective because I don't know if this person is going to work 181, which is what I assume they're going to work.
Excuse me, Mr. Spears. Mrs. Tippett, will you scroll down, please?
Where?
Continue to scroll down.
It's down near the bottom.
Continue. There was additional information at the end of this report on Board Book, and it listed the number of days, 187 days.
Well, I don't see it and I don't have it. So All I have to go by is the salary scales I used to do my comparison of what we talked about earlier. So if it's there, I apologize for missing it, but
Yeah, it was.
I printed it off just
It
like
was,
this.
it was provided, I know at the last board meeting last month, we asked that they, that
No, I
Dr. Hickman.
agree. I
right.
do
So
remember
it-
asking for it, but it wasn't there.
It is
So-
stated $30,300 for the 10 years of experience. That's the step pay.
Okay.
All right.
So, and the
So,
reason I put that point out is the fact is that if you go and you look at the same chart that I looked at, and I understand if it's there and I missed it somehow because I didn't see it or it didn't print off when I printed this, if you go and you look at what we just approved tonight under the same 181 10 years, you're going to see that same number, and that's a weird coincidence. I understand that can occur,
okay.
but that's my whole argument behind it is that why would we pay someone on this coming year's schedule?
I got you.
So,
So now that we clarify what the actual
Yes.
rate of pay is for that item,
right.
is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion that we approve as they're presented.
All right, so it
And
has,
I would
Go ahead.
also ask, going forward, if you're going to put the years, give some other description. Because if you said this is at the end, well, I mean, I don't see it at the end here.
all right, your point is noted. Thank you, Mr. Spears. So it has been motioned by Mr. Spears to approve the recommendations. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Latzenheiser. If there's no more discussion, all in favor of the recommendations, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item under personnel is that for
Certified.
off-contract work,
Certified.
certified administrators.
Right after the employee recognition.
We approved the three above that, but this was not included in that last motion.
Okay. So now we have the recommendation for certified administrators for 2015, 2016. We do have one person noted. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I make a motion that it's not approved pending the outcome of some of this information I'd like to understand a little bit better.
So your motion is not to approve
Correct.
pending information that you're seeking?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for Mr. Spears' motion?
Second.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears and second by Mr. Jones. Discussion.
Yes. Okay. So my question really stems from, and if it's answered and I understand it better, then I may take my motion back. But my question is that in February, when we went through and we approved those administrators for the different level schools, Mr. Wilcox being presented tonight was not presented as one of those individuals, and we did approve Tawan Williams for Cook on that February agenda. And so I guess my question is that, you know, we didn't approve by the deadline, which is my understanding why we did in February and different things. But secondly, we approved an individual who is, my understanding from what we approved, would be the principal at Cook.
No, sir. Mr. Juan Williams is the interim principal at Franklin, and actually, if
Okay.
you don't approve principal by March 1st, they automatically are renewed, sir.
And that's a point that I wanted to make, is
Okay.
that
So-
when you
so
do
that's
not
why I asked my question.
affirmative, if you do not affirmatively
Okay.
non-renew, they are renewed.
renewed.
Right.
So he's got a contract under statute.
No, and that's fine, but that wasn't given to me when I look back over February when we approved all these, that Mr. Wilcox's name was not on there. And so you've answered my question, therefore I withdraw my motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spears. So is there a motion to approve the
We
recommendation
have
for...
to withdraw the second.
Is there... Mr. Jones, did you make the second?
Yes.
Will you withdraw your second? Now, is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Latzenheiser. I'll give it to you, Mr. Latzenheiser. Mr. Spears, I'll capture you as the second.
Yes.
All right, it's been motioned by Mr. Latzenheiser, seconded by Mr. Spears. If there's no more discussion, all in favor of approving the recommendation for the certified administrator, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Now, recommendations for off-contract work. This does require a motion. Is there a
Madam
motion to
President.
approve? Mr. Spears?
I make a motion that we approve A, B, C, D, and F.
A as in apple, B as in boy, C as in cat,
D is in Delta, F is in Foxtrot.
okay. And so you're not including E as in Edward.
Correct.
Is there a second for Mr. Spears' motion?
And so that is a motion to approve
That's
those
a motion
items.
to approve all of the items with the exception of item number E.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Spears has made the motion. Is there a second? Is there a second to Mr. Spears' motion? The motion does die because of the lack of a second. We are still at recommendation for off-contract work. This does require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
So motion.
It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Spears?
Okay, as I had asked at the last meeting, and it still hasn't been provided, was that under E as in Echo, we are being asked to pay June 1st through the 26th. And as I had discussed, when I look back over year, that same type of charge was not done. And I was told at the meeting that this only occurs every 5 years. So therefore, if it occurs every 5 years, it should have occurred in 2010, 2005, and 2000. Being a federal program, that's the way that it works. I was also told that we outsource during those years, that Mr. Brown, who was handling those programs at the time and for many years before that, that he outsourced that, so that it should be something that was paid in the docket around that same time, and also there should be some type of company that we decided not to use this go-round. So I'm just asking now, do we have that information I was told we would be provided for me to review for that particular request?
We do. We
Okay.
actually had, what, 3 people that did that position before? If you want to, we had 3 and now we narrowed down to 1, and I think you want to eliminate it, period? Wow.
Yes, sir, Dr. Hickman, if I might speak. Mr. Spears was partially correct. You were told that the Federal Programs Office or the school district has an option to outsource. I did clarify that at the end of the meeting on Wednesday. We did have the option to outsource and get someone from the outside to come in, but when we were last monitored, we did have these positions in place that did assist with the monitoring instrument, and I do have the past monitoring instrument with me in case you'd like to review that. We had a person, and I will not mention names, that did make $52,000 out of Title I money. We also had a district-paid person that assisted with the monitoring that made $68,000. We have a person, and those 2 positions were not employed at this current time. Those positions were not filled. We have a person that still works for us that was paid at a rate of $56,000 and receives similar compensation now, along with the special ed director or Title I director, Mr. Brown. Also, during that off-contract time, for other reasons, in 2013, we did pay some individuals about $8,300 in title that we're not using this year for those activities. And last year, the district paid $37,133 for off-contract work for curriculum and secretary. So what we're trying to do under this administration is make sure those dollars make it directly back to the classroom, and for administrative activities such as this, we'd like to pay this individual $5,600 instead of the amounts that were noted before. Keep those costs to a minimum.
Ms.
if at all
Spears.
possible.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Mr. Spears, does that answer your question?
It does. I just don't understand why, when the question was asked and we said we had this information, obviously it's been brought tonight, I think it's only, reasonable to assume that if this is something that's justifiable, just like everything else, that I be giving, or anyone be given, that information to evaluate. And while I appreciate, the 65, the 58, all those different thousands of dollars, that would be helpful to know even when the question was asked. And I understand you may have not had it at the time, but, this doesn't have to be a contentious relationship on things. All it is that everybody asked for information. And if you're, we've got it right here, but go ahead and approve it tonight, I don't think that's very fair. And that's why I asked that it not be included tonight.
Well, thank you, Mr. Spears. So we do know now that we have the information, we have the data, and as we go forward, if there is information, Dr. Hickman, that's requested, if we could make that information available as soon as it's retrieved, so that everybody will have the value of having had it and have the opportunity to review it.
And we just did. He requested it, and it took us a time to, remember, he's asking us to go back. My workers have daily things that they have to do.
We understand.
In addition to that, he's asking us to go back years and years to prove something that we already, you know, not to just prove it, but to have the documentation. We already know what was going on, but we have to archive the documentation. So we just got it.
Right.
And you know, we have open door policy, but outside of that, we brought it to the meeting just like it was asked.
Well, thank you for
Right,
the
but
information.
I've sat here for, what is it, almost 2 hours now, and until I asked the question, it was only brought up that you had it. So
Your point is well taken, Mr. Spears. Dr. Hickman, in the future, if we can have the information, as soon as you have it, make it available to the board so that we can make informed decisions. And we are making an informed decision tonight because we have the information that's been shared by Mr. Shannon. So, Mr. Spears, your motion has been made to approve all of the items with the exception of item number E. Oh, that died for lack of second. Thank you. Thank you. We got Fisher and Jones. All right. So if there's no more discussion, all in favor of the recommendation for off-contract work, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record note that Ms. Fisher, Mr. Lotzenheiser, Verdell, and Mr. Jones are in favor. All opposed? Please let the record note that Mr. Spears is in opposition. The motion does carry. The next item on the agenda is that for personnel for summer food service program for 2015. This does require an action.
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve as is presented to the board.
All right. It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is that of the CMSD organizational chart. Board, we did have an opportunity to review the chart. It was for information. Yes. Teacher recommendations. The teacher recommendation for 2015-2016 does require an action. Is there a motion to approve?
Well, hold on. We did the personnel summer feeding. Did we do the extended year 2015? Because I don't believe you did.
We have done recommendations for off-contract. We have done recommendations for...
Because the one I just made a motion for that passed was for the summer feeding program. Next is the ESY, which is extended school year 2015 personnel.
It's not on.
I mean, I'm looking at it too.
Yeah,
I've
right.
got it
2015 personnel.
The agenda.
B.
It's under C.
I have item number D as in dog, teacher recommendation for 2015-2016.
That's right.
Is the next item, followed by the organizational chart.
No.
Is that what you have, Mr. Lotzenheiser, Mrs. Fisher? Mr. Spears, are you looking? What are you looking at?
It's right there with the, it says ESY 2015 personnel. It's B. We did not.
So that was in our original board packet.
It's on board book now.
But somehow it was in board book. It was in the original board packet. Somehow it is not on our printed copies for tonight.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So
Jeez.
we can actually take that up, which is for the extended school year, and
It's on board.
we've had an opportunity to review it. We reviewed it on Wednesday.
So ESL is extended school year for the public and for dummies like me.
ESY, extended school year.
ESY.
So these are for the programs that will be offered over the summer. We know that there are programs for special education. Mrs. Tippett, will you continue to scroll down, please? And those are the teachers that are needed for that. There's one nurse. So, board, we've had this information. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. If there's no more discussion, all in favor of approving the extended school year recommendation, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is that of teacher recommendation 2015-2016. Board, we have had this list, and we've had the opportunity to review it. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Latzenheiser. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda was for information only. That's the way it's captured here, which is the district organizational chart.
And Madam President, that is not correct now. It will have to be redrawn.
So based on the outcome of this meeting, I think that there are some positions that have not been approved tonight. So we do have the organizational chart for information, and whatever necessary changes are needed, we'll turn that over to Dr. Hickman and his staff.
And Madam President, I have one other question.
Mr.
Or
Spears?
actually comment. It's my understanding that currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Director of Compliance Accountability that's listed right next to the one that was not approved tonight is currently vacant and has been since December. Is that correct?
Dr. Hickman? That is correct.
And so, I mean, you know, obviously I know it's not anything up for consideration tonight, but I would just ask that, you know, as we go forward, that particular position, you know, be noted that it's still vacant and has been. So those particular responsibilities, I'd like to know, are those being handled by the assistant superintendent? Because there are certain roles and certain things that position would entail being covered as far as responsibility-wise, and it's, I mean, if we've had it vacant since December, who's doing those jobs? Who's doing the roles? I mean, have we consolidated it into other
I think
individuals?
Dr. Hickman?
As being charged with the executive functions of my staff, I mean, that's why I was hired. We have those positions farmed out right now, just like we would when we didn't hire the human resource person. Mm-hmm. And we had those positions farmed out and overworked and overstaffed, but that's, obviously we're not going to leave things undone, but it waters down the process. A master of all is a master of none. So it doesn't allow our people to really do their job that's pointing it towards what they were supposed to do.
So we have noted that Mr. Spears, we do know that there are some positions that are vacant on the organizational chart. This was one of the objectives and our goals that we asked the superintendent to come back with an organizational chart so that we could see. And so this month is the first month that he has provided the organizational chart.
No, I understand that, but I guess my question is that now we've gone through since December. If you go back and look at the December agenda where that particular specific position was vacated, you know, we've had it open for that period of time, but the responsibilities of the individual that would have been in that position, had it been filled February, whatever, were ongoing, unless there's no responsibilities other than just on paper. So I would like to understand who is doing those responsibilities, because we're asked now to spend, you know, a position that's been vacant all this time, $70,000, $80,000, depending on education, years of experience, all those other things for that particular position, but it's been vacant all this time, so someone's been doing those responsibilities, and so we're going to at some point be asked to approve a person to do that particular role that's been vacant for all this period of time. At a minimum, it would be 5 months if it's brought back next month, but then at that point we would be spending $70,000 plus or $80,000 in that position.
Thank you, Mr. Spears, and I do think that Dr. Hickman answered the question that there are multiple.
I didn't hear the answer.
I think he said it's being farmed out among his staff, that there are multiple people who are picking up the slack, and we know for the last year we've really been in transition, and there have been people stepping up and carrying extra work because we had, you know, so much going on in positions that were vacant and people weren't there to perform the function. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're still in this transition period. So yes, we are aware that these positions are vacant. Yes, Dr. Hickman and his staff, they know that they're vacant and that they're working to try and fill, well, some of the positions we were trying to fill tonight, but
so I just have two questions. I just have two questions.
Yes.
Are the responsibilities for that position being handled currently? I assume that I want a clear answer. Are they being handled by other personnel in the district? And who?
Director of Accountability and Compliance.
Yes.
I would venture to say yes, because I know we have to be in compliance with both federal and state laws
with all
and
due
regulations.
respect, Ms. Friedel, I hear you, but I'm asking Dr. Hickman.
Dr. Hickman.
I just answered the question when I said those positions are being handled and they're being farmed out by other employees within our district.
Okay. Okay. So my question is, who? I mean, that's my third time to ask it. You say you
All my central office staff have a part and piece in handling those positions.
Okay, so each person's got a little nugget of everything, and that job is
This
being
is
handled.
micromanaging at this point in time.
No, it's not micromanaging. I'm asking a question.
But your point is well taken. We understand that
Okay.
there are different people who are having to fill for these vacant positions. We got it. We understand that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
And we have the organizational chart. So it was simply provided for information only.
Okay.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is that from the Office of Instruction, which is consideration to approve the sole source purchase of InfoCap. Board, we've had this information. We do understand the purpose of the software. The software is to create an electronic method or mechanization for registering, for parents to register their children in our district. And we do understand that the software will allow it to talk to the existing data that we have in our system. So if there aren't any questions and no discussion, is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the InfoSnap as presented to the board.
It's been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Spears.
Just one question a point that I'd made, and obviously I know I get information here at the last minute, but I would like to see from the beginning of the school year all the technology that we have asked, or that we've approved, I should say, like InGrade and others, that those be put as we see right here. And I think this is what you presented to me, Dr. Hickman, is that correct? As to when we purchase something, that we have a expected time of delivery and expected time of operational function. Because I go back to, as I stated at the other meeting, I don't want to be buying something that's not being used.
So your point is noted for any software, and I think really that goes under that goal and objective
Yes.
for it. So the next monthly report